Well, I hate to tell Mr. O'Reilly, but I just don't agree with him. He's asked, how do you detect bias in the news? And he says you can't. But actually, Bill, we can. And here's how. There are 7 ways, and in your notes, you will see spaces where you can fill this in. The first way is bias through selection and omission. So basically, you state a fact, but you leave out part of the truth. Like the example, if I'm writing an article and I'm covering like a speaker coming to speak to North Lincoln, and I say the speaker's remarks were greeted by jeers. Well, if I don't tell you much about the speaker, what they said to get those jeers, I mean that's pertinent information. That's pretty important. But if I don't provide that information, you might assume the speaker's not a very good speaker. You might not think very highly of him just based on the fact that I don't tell you all the information. If I'm in favor of the speaker and there are some boos in the audience, I might say there was a handful of dissenters, which means people who disagree. But look at the term I use. There was a handful, not many. So there's definitely bias in the way I present information and what I choose to say and what I choose not to say. For some reason, it goes to number 3. Number 2, the slide for number 2 follows this. I don't care how you write on your paper, it doesn't matter. But another way to detect bias is by headline, without even having to read any of the article. If I'm doing a story, if I'm the author of an article on gay marriage in California, if I choose to make my headline, Gay Marriage Ban Flouted in California, pay close attention to the verb I chose to use, flouted. That to me has a negative connotation. It means like flaunted around. It just sounds not very good. However, I could choose to put the title as San Francisco opens marriage to gay couples. Look at the verb there, opens marriage. That's like open minded. That has more of a positive connotation. And just by reading the headlines, you can gain a sense of what the author thinks about the issue they're writing about. Here's number 2, bias through placement. And this is interesting. A lot of times we, and even I, forget about this type of bias. But typically, most people know that newspapers have the most important story on the front cover. And on the front page, if you make front page news, that's pretty important. And some of the more insignificant or insignificant stories are found in the back. But what you might not know is that a story, one article, is also organized in a biased sort of way. Most stories are written in an inverted pyramid, beginning with what is considered the most newsworthy facts, followed by important details, and then background information. So, for example, if I'm writing an article on mental illness, and if it says the article is about the number of sufferers of mental illness in prison, I might start with the most newsworthy facts. But I might wait until the 4th paragraph down to note that sufferers of mental illness are no more likely to be violent than anyone else. And that might be the beef of the article, but if someone, the typical person, is just reading this article, they might skim the first couple paragraphs, skim the rest, and then look at the conclusion. And you do miss a lot of information when you do that. So readers will only read part of the story, and they might walk away with a very inaccurate view of mental illness. Number 4, bias by word choice, diction, and tone. I've really focused a lot on this because I think this is the easiest. I mean, it's easy to overlook, but it's also easy to spot if you're looking for it. A lot of times the words that we choose to use inspire or create the tone of the article. So let's just say I'm writing an article about the soccer game. And sorry, North Lincoln, but you happen to lose. If my headliner, if I say in the article, North Lincoln suffered a loss, there's 2 negative words here. Suffered, which has a negative connotation, and lost. I might choose to say it was a close game. Now that's a little more neutral. That's better. This is a little more complimentary of North Lincoln. And I could go even further and say it was a near win, which the word loss is not even in there. I mean, it still means the same thing, but the positive word here is win. So if I say North Lincoln lost, then that sounds like I'm more biased, like I'm angry about it. I don't think highly of North Lincoln's soccer team. Or I might say it was a near win, which sounds more positive, like I'm a fan and I was really, really wanting them to win. Bias by photos. We've already talked about photo analysis, but really it's interesting, and we don't think about it. But if I'm writing an article and I want to choose a photo to go with that article to supplement that article, I can choose a good photo or I can choose a bad photo. And watch the news tonight. You will see this example. If I'm writing a story about Gary Coleman, I might use that photo. Child star, cute as can be. Or if I don't like him, if I'm not a fan, I might want to use this one. Either way, it's the same article, it's the same guy. However I feel about him will come through by the photo that I choose. Number 6, bias through the use of names and titles. Now, we just read right over this too, but stop and think about it. If an article is giving a quote by someone, if interviewing an eyewitness or something, often they'll put the title, whether it's their job, who they are, and you might ask, well, why is that even important? Well, it's important because you can determine if someone's credible or not credible. Excuse me. News media often uses labels and titles to describe people, places, and events. Someone might be called an ex-con, or be referred to someone who was served time 20 years ago for a minor offense. Either way, they still serve jail time, but how I phrase it, the titles I choose to use, does have an impact on bias. This next bullet, if it'll ever come up, describes Nelson Mandela. I've seen articles where he was described as a terrorist because he did go to prison for an act of terrorism. Or you can say he's a freedom fighter, fighting for those who are weaker, fighting for human rights. However I phrase it determines bias. And then finally, bias through statistics and crowd counts. And this kind of goes back to what's left unsaid. To make a disaster seem more spectacular and therefore more newsworthy, numbers can be inflated. So let's look at these two statements. More than 900 people attended the event. More than 900 people. And I got an exclamation point at the end. That sounds like a whole bunch of people. So let's just say 950 people actually attended the event. I could say fewer than 1,000 people showed up at the event. It's the same amount of people. It just depends on the word choices I use. And it really, really does have an effect. Oops, sorry, there's 8. I thought there were 7, but there's 8. Bias by source control. You have to ask yourself, who in the world is writing this article? Where is this even coming from? High school students, I hate to say it, and adults are just as guilty, especially with like Facebook and Twitter. You can just start any rumor. But you have to ask yourself, who in the world came up with this story? Last year I had a composition class, and all my students came in and said they read on Twitter that Jerry Springer died. And I was like, he did not die. I watched the news this morning. Nothing happened. And we had a serious debate about it, and I actually Googled, did Jerry Springer die? And I found this article. I took this picture last year on my cell phone at my computer sitting at North Lincoln. And it's this whole article, local team News 9. It just sounds official. And all the students were like, yeah, Miss Fear, you were wrong. Turns out I wasn't wrong. This was just some bogus website. Not really sure what the point was. Every now and then you'll hear a rumor about a celebrity dying, and it's just not true. But you just have to always consider where the news item comes from. Was the information supplied by a reporter, an eyewitness, a police or fire official? And even then, are they credible? You just don't know. So, you do have homework for tonight. I'm not sure if Miss Bryson's going to give you time in class to work on it, but what you're going to do is, I'll explain it more in detail in a minute, but Miss Bryson's going to give you an additional handout. This is your homework. She's also going to give you an upfront magazine. All you're going to do is read one article. You're going to analyze the cover of the magazine, turn to page 12, analyze the photos used, and then read the actual article. And using your notes from today, you're going to complete the handout. You have to be prepared to discuss tomorrow. But let's take a look at this homework. Alrighty, so what we doing tomorrow? When you come in, I'm going to probably catch up with some of you to tell you hello. Then we're going to check your homework, Miss Bryson and I both, and she is going to take this for a grade. After that, I will explain the discussion expectations, which I'm going to do anyway in just a minute, and then we will begin filming. We will have our debate, and as we listen to each other's insights and comments, you will be recording and critiquing others. So you're going to be taking notes of what others say and determining whether you agree or disagree with them. And then after that, I'm hoping the debate will take up the majority of the class period, at least a good 20, 30 minutes maybe. And then I do have a post activity and a self reflection, which the self reflection is easy, but it is a grade you completed and it's a good grade. Remember that you will be on video if you had your permission slip signed, and so you need to be on your best behavior. If you're like texting out of your pocket, first of all, we're not idiots and we can see that, but you will be on video, so we'll have like clear evidence. So please be on your best behavior. Also, on the other extreme, do not be shy just because there's a camera in the room. Forget about it. Just be yourselves and be your smart selves that I know you are. So, expectations for tomorrow are very high. I know most of you, and I've heard wonderful things about the rest of you. So, here are my expectations. You need to come to class prepared. If you don't, you're going to be a nervous wreck because we're going to be discussing. I'm going to be calling on you. You can't even do this last minute. And by all means, please God, know that anyway, you shouldn't copy someone. You have to know your stuff, which means spend more than 5 minutes doing this. Expect to participate, expect to be called on, and expect to defend your answers. Don't just form an opinion, you have to be able to back it up. Be open-minded. Now, it is going to be a discussion, a little debate going on, but do respect each other, even if you don't agree, especially if you don't agree. Hopefully, you won't all agree. Excuse me. But if you don't agree, do so kindly. There's a way to do it. Also, be the amazing critical thinkers that I know you all are. And finally, you honors kids, want to know how you're going to be graded. Obviously, you need to do your homework. We're going to check that. You are going to be graded on your participation in class. You need to say at least one insightful comment. Now, just one comment is probably not going to get you the most points, so do keep that in mind. As we are discussing, you need to be taking notes, recording other people's insights and opinions, so you do need to complete the discussion chart and obviously the post activity that we do after the discussion. And finally, you need to complete the rubric and self-assessment. So a lot of stuff. It's really not that bad. All I'm really asking is that you're engaged, that you take the time to do it, because I do think you'll be interested once we get into it. Trying to make this fun for you guys. And also, important. I mean, it is important that you learn how to do this. Grow up a little bit. But I really do look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you again. I can't thank you enough. Thank you, Miss Bryson. And I look forward to our discussion. Happy